what outlet you're from in the chat. And our press secretary, Yolanda Barksdale, do you have other instructions for the media that has come in?
Actually, no. What we'll need you to do is when it comes time to the question and answers, or for your questions, please put them in the question and answer box or raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, please. Thank you.
Right, great. And when you do, please put, when you do in the Q&A as well, put your affiliation. Thanks so much, everyone, for being here today. All right. Yolanda and Martha, does it sound like this is a good time to get going?
Let's go.
Yes, let's go ahead and go.
All right, Reverend Barber.
Thank you so much to members of the media. I'm Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, President of Repairs of the Breach and co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. You'll also hear from Reverend Dr. Liz Steele Harris, the Executive Director of Kairos and the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. Most importantly, you're going to hear from workers in West Virginia who represent literally millions of voices across the country, thousands and thousands, over 300,000 in West Virginia. We will be in West Virginia on the ground this coming Monday, as well as we will have people on the ground in Arizona and several other states pushing for this full COVID relief that keeps $15 minimum wage in. We can't take, as Pam has told us, the relief out of the relief. This is very, very serious business. We're not backing up on this. We just met with Senator Manchin, and the workers were very clear that you will hear from that they are not taking no for an answer, that they are pushing and demanding $15 as a minimum, that we understand that no politician, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter, can say this is a left issue, a right issue, a center issue, a far left, or far right. This is a human issue. It's about fundamental justice. It's about the establishment of justice. It's about providing for the common defense and promoting the general welfare. Particularly with Democrats, though, they ran on it. They put it in their platform. They have said that this is what needs to happen. It's been pushed for years, and it would be an ultimate abandonment and betrayal to now get here and have the power to do it and then to retreat. No politician can say they believe in racial equity, gender equity, and economic justice without raising the minimum wage to at least 15. You cannot talk about you want to deal with racial justice and not talk about 15. The fact of the matter is 15 as a minimum is as important as the New Deal was to the Great Depression, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights of 1965. Just yesterday, we did an article saying this is our economic Selma. This is our economic Selma. We want to say that yesterday, we're glad to hear the president finally say no person should work for less than, work and live in poverty. But we know 60 million Americans, over 60 workers, earn less than $15 now before COVID. And these are the workers that have been on the front line during the pandemic. They've been the first to have to go to work, the first to get sick, the first to die. And they've been the first to watch trillions of dollars go to the corporation, the bank. All kinds of rules were adjusted. Nothing, nobody talked about parliamentarian. Nobody talked about order. All they talked about was giving money, trillions of dollars, even sometimes money the business didn't even ask for. One time over $1 trillion that came straight from the treasury, didn't even go through the legislative process. And so raising the minimum wage, it isn't about appeasing a progressive members of the media. That's not what this is about. It's about building from the bottom. It's about building the economy that works for everybody. It's about saying truthfully in our policy that we believe in racial and equity, gender, and it's about geographical equity. And lastly, we need to stay, we're calling on Republicans to join. They never have. Democrats to stay strong. And we don't need talk about indexing. We don't need one minimum wage in one state and another in another. People are hurting. Even 15 is a form of compromise, and that is that it cannot stay where it is. We've been far too long. And we must include all workers, including tip workers. So I want to stop here and let the workers tell you from their experience. We want to put a face on this argument. So it's not just about rules and phony conversations about out of order and putting stuff off on a parliamentarian. This is about the people. And one thing we know about Washington, D.C., they can do what they want to do when they really want to do it. And we're calling on the millions and thousands of people to push them, to make them want to do what is right and what will lift this economy. And without it, far too many people will continue to struggle and die. Remember, members of the media, before COVID, 250,000 people died every year from poverty. Don't ever forget that when we talk about death. Poverty kills and destroys, and it doesn't have to be. So right now we're going to call on persons who are from West Virginia, who are workers representing workers throughout West Virginia and the country. Pam, is it Pam? No, Brianna?
Hi. Hello, my name's Brianna. I'm here in Fayette County, West Virginia. I've been a service worker for over 13 years. I've done just about everything in the restaurant industry. I also am a raft guide during the season. When COVID hit, we were only getting, they don't take in the fact that I make a sub-minimum wage of $2 an hour, so they don't take in my tips for my unemployment. I was only getting $67 a week, and that ran out in August. And I lost my house. I had to move in with my grandmother. And even though I have gone back to work as a bartender, we're not getting the same amount of tips. It's 50 to 75% less. And that sub-minimum wage isn't making up for that. If it was $15 an hour, I could afford to live on my own. I could afford to buy a car that's not 25 years old. We just really need help here.
And millions of tip workers, am I right, Brianna, could not even qualify for unemployment. Millions of them. Media, you need to understand that when people say what they've done through these little small stimulus, millions of people are left out. And tip workers, we know, comes straight out as a legacy of post-slavery, and it's time for that to be over. They were left out in the recovery from the Great Depression. They cannot be left out now. Our next person is Pam from West Virginia.
Hello, I'm Pam Garrison from Fayette County too. I've been a minimum wage worker my whole life. The minimum wage has never been sufficient to feed my family and to survive on. I hear all this talk, and like Reverend Robert said, this is supposed to be a rescue package. Well, you can't take the biggest part of the rescue out of a rescue package. If you give us a decent pay, we're going to put the money back in the economy. We're going to be able to feed our families. We're going to raise up out of poverty. If you've never lived in poverty, you have no idea mentally, physically, emotionally, what it does to you and wears on you. By the time you're 55 years old, you're just frazzled. And then you can't even get Social Security until you're 62 to 65. So in between them times, you struggle, you suffer, you do without. I work side jobs, cleaning people's houses, trying to get food on the table. And this is not just about the rescue at one time. Our economy's been stagnant. We need to get our economy going. We are a service nation now, and you need to pay the service workers a decent wage to where we can invest in this economy and get our economy going. $15 is not too much. That's just $7.25. That's $5.90 in almost 50 years that it's took them to get it up to $7.25. 15's not too much. $7.25 is too far behind. And so, thank you.
And Media, you'll be able to ask Pam any other questions. She can tell you even the stories of people in Fayette and all over who are having to decide between heat and food and medicine and not having health care. And it doesn't have to be this way. And we need Senator Manchin and the senator out of Arizona. And as we said, it's one thing for Republicans to block. They've always been blocking, but it's a whole nother form of betrayal if Democrats don't step up in this moment and do right by all of the people. Who is next?
Well, we're going to have Allie, another service worker, speak, and then we'll have Jean.
Hi, I'm Allie Martinez. I'm in Jefferson County, West Virginia. I've been in the service industry for over 14 years now. I was one who firsthand being in the front of the lines, I got COVID, in turn gave it to my entire family, but I had to work. We are being exposed to it on a daily basis because everyone.
You went off. You caught it, accidentally cut your.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'll just start over. I'm Allie. I've been in the service industry for 14 years now. I was one of the front hands that got COVID from having to be at work. I've gotten no unemployment. I didn't qualify for the stimulus. I've gotten no state assistance. This $15 an hour with the COVID relief package would help not just me, but every single service employee in this entire industry. Whether you're in the bar business, whether you're in the coffee shop, whatever it is that you're making it as a tipped employee, we need this $15 an hour. When we can't qualify for anything because they're only looking at the $213 an hour on our paychecks, which is nothing because of taxes, it really, really sucks. I mean, we cannot take care of our kids. We can't take care of anything. Everyone has someone in their life that is affected by this. Every single person. It just takes having a soul, which everyone should have a soul, to realize that you shouldn't make your family affected by this.
Gene, you're on mute.
Thank you. What you have heard already are comments from people who are down in the middle of it and dealing with it right now. I am the oldest person on this panel. I have been there, but my poverty was different. We worked, we raised a garden, blah, blah, blah. Coal miners had a union and all of these things, and took off our shoes in the summertime and never put them back on until going to Sunday school at the end of the week, and didn't really know we were poor because we were working, we were loved. Well, found out years later, that was a whole different world then. Now we do not have that. We are surrounded by situations that you've heard and situations you've never heard. And yes, as has been said, if you have not lived in poverty, you really don't have a clue what's going on. So you need to talk to people who are there. What we have done today with Senator Manchin, what we are continuing to do, we are trying to get him to be the senator that he isn't aware that he can be. We are trying to get him to live up to what he heard, what he was told when he was a kid. And he was told, well, if you have all of these blessings, then you can share your blessings. So I say to him, we don't want any of your millions. We just want you to share your blessings by taking care of the people who put you in office to do so. That's all we want. Thank you. And that $15 is nothing, and all of you know it.
That's right.
You know it. It's not fair. Let's be what you claim to be. This is Bible Belt I live in. This is what gets me. I live in Bible Belt. I live in Bible Belt, West Virginia. And yet, you talk it, you don't want to miss church on Wednesdays. You talk it, but you don't act it.
That's right.
Where there's no vision, the people will die.
That's right.
So
The
we have
last
some,
place we should have opposition is out of a southern state of West Virginia. Third of all poor people live in the South, the low wages that are here. And also you just said something that the Senator Manchin and any Democrat in this moment, the Republicans ought to be doing it, but let's talk about who has the majority. It ought to be so unified because they either have the opportunity to be the hero of poor and working people and low income people, the heroes greater than anybody since the Great Depression, or they can be the adversaries. But there's no middle ground in this. This is not about centrists. This is about people's lives. This is about what is right. Shally Barnes, Attorney Shally Barnes is our Director of Public Policy, and she wants to make a clear statement right now on some things that are being said and to dismiss them because we don't want things confused in the media. Shally.
Thank you, Reverend Barber. Senator Manchin has made it very clear that he would go up to 11 or maybe 12, for West Virginia, but what we know is that West Virginians need 15. Even the poorest counties in West Virginia need a modest standard of living. In fact, a living wage in West Virginia would be over $23 an hour, but half of the workforce in the state is working for less than 15. So to keep West Virginians, so far below the cost of living at a lower pay rate than the rest of the country, it doesn't protect workers. It for the And as you all heard on this call, this is not what the folks in West Virginia say they need. We know we've done the work with other economic policy institutes and others to know that this is unsound economics and bad policy to do anything less, and for anything less than 15 in West Virginia or in any other place in the country.
Shelley, is it correct that none of these senators voted against the COVID relief bill that put 84% trillions and trillions of dollars into the pockets of corporations and banks, and not that they didn't vote nobody voted against the trillions going to corporations? We are concerned that people, when it comes to poor, low wealth people, either want to vote it down, compromise it down, or vote against it at all. Am I right about none of them voted against?
That's right. And the arguments are always against, any measure that would improve the lives in a significant way for the poor and low-income people in West Virginia across the country. There are a lot of arguments against that, how we can't afford it. But the trillions of dollars that were released, almost a year ago to corporations and financial institutions and more powerful interests, there were no arguments against that.
The next voice is Reverend Dr. Liz Steele Harris, a powerful sister, has been fighting in these issues of poverty for over 25 years, and she's going to speak, and then she'll open it up for questions.
Reverend Barber.
Did I miss somebody? Pam, go ahead.
This is Pam. I'd just like to comment and let them know about the meeting we just met with Senator Manchin. He keeps talking about Senator Byrd, and I just wanted to remind him a little bit about what Senator Byrd, the reason that we've got roads named after him, universities, hospitals, everything else, is because of what he did for the people. When he got into power, he used that power for the good of the people, and that's what we were trying to get Senator Manchin to see. If you do what's good for the people, even after you're gone, you're going to be remembered in history. And all of this is going to be history, and how you're going to be seen to the people. And if you help the people raise them up, they're going to admire you. But if you keep dogging them down, you keep your foot on their throat, then they're going to remember that too.
That's right. And
we're watching. We're not dumb. Just because we ain't got college educations, we're not dumb. We know what's going on. We live it. And every day we live it. And so, these fancy words and stuff they talk and everything, we know what that means. It means side talk and spin, but we know what side talk and spin is. That's and right. We can figure it out. So, we just want them to know we're not taking this no more. We have worked for slave wages, poverty wages for almost 50 years. And we can't keep going on no more. We're at the point where depression was at. Then people was desperate. Well, I'm telling you, we're at that point now. We are desperate. We are not taking no. We are demanding $15 an hour.
You're right.
So I appreciate that. I just want them to know the severity of this. We're not playing.
Yeah. I was amazed.
Thank you, Reverend Barber.
I was amazed the senator would look in the face and hear the voices and then say, but I'm talking about $11 and then do a little bit gradually. I mean, to hear what the stories you all told and to still come back. And that's why we're not backing up. We cannot back up. But Liz, go forward so we can get into questions.
No, that's right. And the stories that people are telling here and that told in that meeting are so powerful, right? Well, we know that throughout this pandemic, we started calling service workers, home healthcare workers, fast food workers, restaurant workers essential. But what we've heard from people today, the very workers from West Virginia, but then also from Alabama, Arizona, Kansas, is don't call us essential unless society is able to pay people enough to get all the essentials that we need, right? And that is not what's happening. So it's so important that we had these poor and low wage workers from West Virginia demanding justice directly to Senator Manchin this morning, and making it so clear that we need $15 as a minimum wage to begin with, as a floor. We need a union. We need everybody in, including tip workers, that we have to have this included in the COVID relief package, because you can't take the relief out of a relief package by not raising wages, and that we have to lift from the bottom so that all of society can rise. What we know is that calls to compromise, and what we heard this today, in this moment, in a moment when close to 500,000 people have died, when 45% of the poorest workers have lost income at the same time as the richest billionaires have made $1 trillion, when the people who are working and poor are too poor to be able to get the relief packages so far, that we have to do better. What we know from, as Reverend Barber said at the beginning of this and in the meeting, is the vast majority of people in this country, Americans, West Virginians, want 15 in a union. Poor and low wage workers turned out in record numbers to vote for candidates that were pledging to raise the minimum wage to an actual living wage. And so we can't afford not to raise wages. The economic costs are too great. And what we know is that it's a lie to say that there is not enough.
That's right.
That's a lie. And the only scarcity that we have in this moment is a scarcity of political will, a scarcity of those that are in power doing the right thing.
Right.
So that's where the people of West Virginia, the people of Arizona, the people of Alabama, the people of New York, the people of North Carolina, in this campaign and in movements across this country, are going to keep on coming forward in power with these demands, because it does not have to be this way. And what we know is that people are building that power in West Virginia, and we are just getting going. And so I think we wanted to open it up for questions, especially to the poor and low wage workers that are among us from West Virginia, who really ran the meeting with Senator Manchin this morning, and hoping that people have some questions for us.
Reverend Liz, if we could make sure to let people in the media know, we also had Mary Kay Henry, who supported her workers from SEIU. She represents over 2.2 million people. We've had those who support the tip workers. And for the media, these are three things I want you to hear now. It needs to be 15 now. If you notice, all of the trillions of dollars that went to corporations, they got it immediately. Why is it always that we want poor and low wealth people to wait? Number two, 55% of poor and low wealth people voted for Democrats, voted to change the Senate. They wouldn't have the Senate. They wouldn't have the presidency. They wouldn't be it if it was not for poor and low wealth people who believed them when they said, both on the campaign trail and when they said in their platform, that $15 minimum wage was what they would do. And then lastly, for over 40% of Black people work for less than living wage. You cannot talk about, you want to address racial equity and just talk about police reform and prison reform. That is actually disrespectful to think that is the only thing that you have to do to deal with racial justice. You have to deal with economic justice. And you can't say you care for people in Appalachia. You can't say you care for poor white people. You care for women if you don't address the issue of a living wage, and you address it now. We want the media to be very clear. And again, this is not, please don't say this is far left or far right. It's not what this is. If you look at Black people, it's 400 years too late. Slavery got 0. Today we get 725. It took 400 years to get 725. The minimum wage hadn't even been raised for more than 9 years. People are literally hurting and dying before COVID. And I'm so glad, Liz, that you finally brought up. Billionaires have made almost $1 trillion. $1 trillion in the midst of COVID, while more people have been falling into poverty and dying. And the people we're talking about, members of the media, are the first to have to go to work, the first to have to risk their lives, the first to get infected, the first to die. And now they're being told they got to be the last. the last to get vaccines, the last to get a wage. We cannot be silent on this. So I'm through. Members of the media, we'd love to hear your questions. Rob?
Great.
Oh, no, I think it's me, or you can
Okay.
take it, Rob.
Yeah, Yolanda, I'll pass it to you. I just want to make sure everyone knows that Sherry McKinney is on from 1199 in West
Oh, great.
Virginia. And it can also answer questions representing, they had a worker who gave powerful testimony that we'll report on, as well as Mary Kay, but just want to recognize her being here on behalf of their workers. But Yolanda.
Is that worker there on the line?
Sherry, do you want to just say greeting?
Yeah, come on, Sherry,
Yes.
real quickly. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad to be here from the great state of West Virginia and let you all know that the healthcare workers, like we represent these frontline workers across the state of West Virginia, more than 6,000 nursing home, hospital, MRDD workers, just like Jordan Rutherford, who spoke to Senator Manchin this morning. And I'd just like to say to everyone that we've coined the phrase recently, healthcare heroes. And it's something here at SEIU that we have been saying for years about frontline workers. These are the healthcare heroes. And not just during this pandemic, but for their entire careers. They have putting themselves on the front lines, taking care of people in emergency rooms, people with developmentally disabled people like Jordan takes care of every day. Jordan's working 50 to 60 hours a week just to make rent and drive a 20-year-old car for folks that didn't get to hear that. This is a shame. How do we refer to these folks as healthcare heroes going out in the middle of a pandemic, risking their lives, risking their families' lives? Folks like Allie Martinez that's on here with you today, and with Brianna. I hail from right here in Huntington, West Virginia. I can throw a rock and hit the Texas Roadhouse where you live, and I'm sorry you had to leave and go to Fayetteville, and I can't wait for you to get back to your job here. But it is a shame that we believe that $875 in West Virginia and $735 can actually pay the bills. It's not possible. We need to do better. Senator Manchin can be the hero in this situation. He can be the hero that healthcare workers in West Virginia deserve, and he can vote for a straight $15 an hour. Nothing less is going to make ends meet in West Virginia. So I want to encourage all the workers here and everyone to continue to reach out to Senator Manchin, because it's time for him to be a hero for West Virginians and represent the healthcare heroes that we represent here at SEIU District 1199.
Sure, let me ask you a quick question so the media can get it. Is
Sure.
it true that there are healthcare workers that are risking their lives, taking care of other people, and can't even afford insurance themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Every day, people are going out there taking work. We just heard from a worker this morning that makes $9.85 an hour, doesn't qualify for state assistance, doesn't get any help, needs $7,000 worth of dental work done, is working 60 hours a week just to pay the rent, and had to get a roommate that cannot afford health insurance himself. And he's taking care of people every day of his life, 50 to 60 hours a week.
Yeah. And that is why it is not just a shame, I'll say it, it's a damn shame that, and particularly when politicians like today will say, well, isn't it really $8 minimum wage in West Virginia? Like that's something great.
Right.
Or didn't you get some stimulus, as though that's something like the great, or what I want to do is sit in the room. I think Senator said, sit in the room where I can talk with other people and look at their soul. But why is it that they get in the room and they talk, and the talk is about how not to do what needs to be done, how to compromise it. But when it's the corporations, it's always talking about how to do what they want and more. That's the problem. And these senators and others need to be doing right first by the real heroes of this society every day, poor and low wealth workers. Members of the media?
Okay. We have our first question from Christina Peterson from the Wall Street Journal. And she asks, she's interested in whether Senator Manchin showed any openness to a compromise on minimum wage. And if so, what might that look like?
Well, I want to ask, well, I don't know in terms of compromise. No, we're not interested in compromise. The 15 is a compromise. You just heard our policy person say in West Virginia, if you're talking about a real living wage, it would be over $23. What we did not hear from him, he mentioned a piece about $11 and then indexing it and how we go. But as you heard Shally, and I'll let her speak to that, what he was suggesting would just further keep people in poverty and hurting. I mean, even when we hear people saying we want to pass this, but we'll implement it a little bit at the time, people are hurting now. People are not, people are going to work now. People are not able to afford healthcare now. The people that we're talking about are saving this economy now, and they can't even be saved. So, Shally, you want to?
Yes, I mean, I think we've heard, you know, Reverend Barber summarized the basic argument is that, you know, willingness to go to 11 as a way to, you know, to express an unwillingness to go to 15, and you know, in some places this is that West Virginia, you know, can't afford it, doesn't need it, that kind of thing, but we all know that that's simply, you know, not true. Again, the a living wage in West Virginia would be over $23 an hour, and the economy, you know, in general can't afford it. And this is the time for the kind of big, bold economic policies to lift up the 710,000 people in West Virginia who are poor or one emergency away from being poor. I'm sorry, who were poor or one emergency away from being poor before the pandemic. And these numbers have only become worse over the past, you know, the past nearly a year now. And so, you know, 15 is not too much to ask. It is possible and it is necessary.
Is there a worker that wants to tell how you really? I have a comment, but a worker, Pam, or any of you all, Brianna, that want to speak to what you heard the senator saying, and whether it impressed you or concerned you, or whether it made you feel better or feel like we need to keep fighting.
Right, and Reverend Barber, I just want to make, because I think this will answer a number of the questions that we're getting from the media. If Brianna, Pam, and Allie could respond to how Senator Manchin responded to
Great.
the impact that had, and what your response to his response as well.
Great.
This is Pam. As for me, I think he was listening. I think he heard our side, but in his mind, I think he was still wrestling, because he brought it up to us about what all the businesses couldn't absorb it and things like that. Well, if you make $50,000 a year, $36 or $38 of that goes to, of your taxes go to help assistance programs. 4,000 of that goes to corporate subsidies. All right, if the small businesses need help with absorbing it until we get everything implemented, then use some of them subsidies for the small businesses instead of the corporations that are getting slave wage labor and making their stockholders trillions of dollars by their projected stocks that their projected earnings they're supposed to make. So to me, it's a cop out. You know, the excuses that we did get and to me, like I said, $15 an hour is not too much. $7.25 is too far behind. They need to catch up. And like I said, we're not taking no. We're not dumb. We know what's going on. So thank you.
And before we go to Brianna, one of the things media you should hear is that he had to agree that 725 is not enough. He even had to acknowledge. He tried to say that it was debatable whether the poverty line was sufficient and accurate. We told him no, it is not debatable. The fact of the matter, even the poverty line is 55 years too old and it's too low.
Right.
So there's some things that he's clear on. The issue is, will he move? Will he do what he knows? Will he correct what he knows is wrong? That's the issue. Brianna, how are you in the meeting? What do you think about what he said?
I felt like, yeah, he was kind of copping out, especially when I was trying to tell him that with my sub minimum wage, I was only getting $67 a week for unemployment. And he was like, well, what about the $600? And I was like, well, that was in last year and it ended in May or June. And I haven't had any government help since. I've lost my house and everything. And he just kind of seemed to think that that $600 that happened about almost a year ago was, enough to get me by, when that doesn't even cover half of my rent.
How did that make you feel when you're talking about a living wage that's going to change your life forever for long haul, and he brought up the $600 almost as though, that was
Like,
a good thing.
I kind of feel like he's got his head in the clouds and he doesn't understand what's happening to poor people in West Virginia.
Okay. Is there another worker that wants to speak to?
Excuse me, but what caught my attention was how quickly he jumped on her problem and wanted to be the savior and tell her to contact his office and we will take care of it and blah, blah, blah. That's what I've seen consistently in what's written is how he deals with things. He makes himself your good daddy. He will take care of you.
It wants to deal with an individual issue and not deal with the structural reality.
Absolutely.
That's right. And that's the problem. He call my office and I can fix that. And as though $600 is an answer for structural living wage.
And it was so powerful to have Jordan from SEIU and other workers that were on this call from West Virginia saying, my story is just one of thousands. It's one of hundreds of thousands. So if you want to fix the problems I'm having, you got to fix the whole system. You can't just peel us off individually. You can't just say that one thing's going to help, me over here because I'm special and I'm talking to you. But if this is happening to all of us, and we got to have a structural solution.
Let me ask Shally too, because the media needs to hear this. Understand that the part of the problem with poor and low wealth workers is neoliberalism that says all you got to do with the middle class and everybody is not true, and trickle down doesn't work. We're saying we need the full just COVID relief, the infrastructure, the green jobs, the changing of the way we look at the poverty codes, the living wages, the healthcare, all of it's the totality of it. And in fact, if you do that, if you actually do that, it's been proven by studies that even the other day when the budget office said that you would lose 1 million jobs, first of all, it's over 10 years, but what the budget office didn't say was all the other jobs that would be created by the money that will come into society, by the infrastructure and all that. So it's not either or. It's not like trying to pick one piece. It's not saying, well, if we just do child tax credit, we don't have to do living wage. Well, if you do child tax credit, but you keep the adults in poverty, one cancels out the other. Shall I speak to that before we go to our next question?
Yes, of course. And just quickly on what the Congressional Budget Office said about 15, they also admitted that it would raise the wages for nearly 30 million workers across the country.
Exactly.
And so that is part of what we're saying, that there are tens of millions of workers who have been working for far too less for far too long. And we've heard this from Brianna, from Allie, from Pam, from everybody, who spoke with Senator Manchin's office earlier, from Jordan, that when we're not earning enough, we're at risk of losing our homes, we're at risk of losing our health care, we're at risk of not being able to afford dental care, we're at risk of not being able to afford these basic necessities of life. And therefore, in the moral budget that the Poor People's Campaign released in 2019, we showed that you have to address all of these issues together. This includes meeting the needs, raising the resources to meet these needs of the 140 million people who are poor, one emergency away from being poor now, and making sure that we are addressing the wealth inequality, the loopholes that are created through the 2017 tax bill, and we're addressing the disproportionate spending on military and moving resources towards COVID relief, towards healthcare, towards living wages, towards housing, towards ensuring water security for everybody, and proper, safe, equitable schools and education for our children. This is what it means to live from the bottom. And when we do, this will reap benefits for our whole economy. Every element of every state in the country would benefit, every community. And this is what it means to live from the bottom. It's a theory of economic. It's an economic theory and a moral policy that, when we live from the bottom, everybody rises. It is the counter to trickle down, which has also been proven false, and that it does not work.
We got a question coming in. Question from media.
Yes, we have a question from Maya King. with Politico. Maya, I'm going to put you on live. Here you go. Maya?
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. I believe you've really already answered my question here. I was wondering sort of what the response from Senator Manchin was to your demands, but it sounds like he really was more willing to compromise than he was necessarily willing to fully listen to what you were asking for. So I'll move on to my second question there, unless there was anything else you wanted to add, and ask what your next steps are in terms of advocacy and how you plan to continue to push for a $15 minimum wage.
And full COVID relief. Yeah, well, we're having Moral Mondays for the 100 days. We'll be on the ground in West Virginia next week and in Arizona, because we got a Democratic senator out there that's betraying what the promises were. We're rallying literally millions of people. Unions are drawing in. I think, and I'll let Rob say in a minute, all of the labor organizations will be joining us Monday, but most importantly, the people, poor and low wealth people, more religious leaders. We're doing advocacy, we're doing calling. If it wasn't for COVID, we'd literally be right there in DC. I mean, the bottom line is we're not backing up on this. And I think it's important for us to say at this point, Maya, we're not going to allow the senators to use this so-called reconciliation and the parliamentarian as a scapegoat for them not voting. The truth of the matter is, over and over again, even yesterday, an article came out saying that this 15 impacts enough of the budget for it to qualify under reconciliation. But even if it didn't, we know the history. There have been times in the past where they have overridden reconciliation for tax cuts for the corporations. So we only hear that all of this stuff when it comes to poor and low wealth people. That's when rules come up and we can't do. But then when it's corporations, it's whatever. As we know, last year, over $1 trillion was handed to corporations that didn't even come through the Congress. It was just out of the Treasury Department. So we are not falling for the double talk. We're not falling for the excuses. We believe there's an attempt to try to take folk off the hook. They say, well, I would have voted for it, but we couldn't get it through. It can be done, and it must be done. There must be a vote. And the American people need to see where people will stand and vote for the whole bill, vote for it intact. There's some that are trying to say, well, we want to go to regular order, because what they mean by that is it requires 60 some votes. So then they can say, well, it wasn't us. We wanted it, but it's time out. That's what people are saying for these games when it comes to poor and low wealth people. And so we have a full press advocacy in place, Maya.
And it looks like Ali has something to add there.
My only comment is he was so quick to offer Brianna assistance in a question about, what about that extra 600? It's mind-boggling to me that there was no issue of throwing this extra unemployment out. The 600, the 300. But what about us that had to continue to work, that had no choice but to stay working and was just, we didn't qualify for anything. We got no state assistance. But why is it so hard to give us that extra to the $15 an hour to try and attempt to have a living wage? But they can continue to throw out unemployment benefits, which I get it. Some people were not as fortunate as I was to be able to keep a job, and their jobs are still not open, or they've lost their job completely. Yes, they need financial help too, but what about us that are still putting our lives at risk on a daily basis of having to go to work, but we're not good enough. We're not good enough. You got to get COVID. Oh, well, that sucks. I'm sorry. You have to, put your whole family at risk, but we can't give you that extra money.
That's right.
I think we have one more question from Yolanda from Michael Collins at USA Today.
Yes. So I'm actually going to bring Michael Collins on so he can access.
And for the members of the media, no, we'll actually be physically on the ground in West Virginia and in these states next week. People will be at the offices of senators. People are saying we're not going to just risk if we got to fight and risk, we're going to double mask. We're going to be COVID safe, but we're going out into the street. We're going in front of these senators' office. I'll be in West Virginia physically, but people are going to be all over the country, workers in these select areas. And Rob, I hope after this question, you'll say the states that we'll be in on Monday. Michael?
Okay, I'll bring Michael on now. Okay, Mr. Collins?
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this call. You've mentioned several times during this call about how important it is to have this bill as part have the $15 minimum wage as part of the COVID relief package. President Biden has said that he is open to the possibility of negotiating a separate bill to raise the minimum wage to $15. So can you talk about why you think it's important to have it as part of this COVID relief package as opposed to a separate bill on its own?
First of all, because it's in it. Second of all, because people before COVID were making less than living wage, 62 million people. Third, because the March on Washington in 1957, 63 called for a $2 minimum wage, which would be 15 today. We're 57 years too late. Fourthly, people are dying. Fifthly, people may have made a less than living wage are the ones that have been the first to put their lives on the line, the first to get affected, the first dying. There's no such thing as COVID relief that does not address the economic disparity that COVID has exposed. And lastly, you cannot talk to us about racial disparity and you don't deal with raising living wage. 44% of African Americans make less than a living wage. You can't talk about gender and geographical equity, racial equity and gender and geographic equity. So, and the president ran on it. There was no conversation during the election. There was no hesitation. There was no stuttering. Not one Democrat talked about, when we do COVID relief, we'll keep it out, or well, the only way we can do it is a 60 to put it in an order where it would require 60 some vote. No. That's all you heard. 15 in the union, addressing racial disparity and expanding healthcare. Platform, you run on it, you do it. The one thing that the extremists who call themselves Republicans are good at is they do what they say. If they say they're gonna hurt Black people, they do it. If they say they're gonna take healthcare, they do it. If they say they're gonna give tax cuts to the greedy, they do it. Why is it? Right now, and the two senators from Georgia, they ran on it. That's how the Senate was changed. 55% of poor and low wealth voters voted for Democrats, the Biden-Harris ticket, and to change the Senate because they voted for change. And there's no reason not to have it in. We don't need a compromise to another bill. We need a fight for this bill, and it's in the power. Even if there was some parliamentary, there's a process even there for overruling that. And I'm glad that Pam brought up Byrd. The Byrd rule. Byrd put that in there to stop, the original intent of it was to try to keep powerful corporate forces and others for being able. It wasn't supposed to be used to hurt poor and low wealth people. It wasn't supposed to be used to block lifting poor and low wealth people. Not one of these senators could live off what people are living off of. Not one of them have cut their salary. Every one of them make hundreds of thousands of dollars just from us. Every one of them gets free health care. Every one of them have never voted for their wages to be less. That's why. This is our economic Selma. This is it right now. And it's time for people to step up and not talk about left, right, center, but talk about you cannot claim that you love essential workers, but then you pass a bill and you leave out what is most essential to them. And that is a fundamental, as Liz said, structural change in the living wage to 15, which itself is a compromise. It ought to be 20. So poor and low wealth people have already compromised it. We don't need another compromise. We need commitment.
Great. Thank you, Reverend Barber. We had just a question, and I'll do a quick answer if you want to add to it, but that we get from Cassie Chu from Sojourners and Zach from Zach Harrell from The Guardian. If Senator Manchin gave any reasons for the number he came up with, $11 an hour, or if he gave evidence of why they couldn't absorb 15. We didn't, and the answer, he didn't give any real reasons behind it. One thing he said was about indexing, which is, we know is the best lies have a hint of truth in it, because it makes us think that it's sensible that you don't need this $15 everywhere, you can have less in poor areas or rural areas. But on the other hand, it's the most absurd argument that you want to keep people in low wage work in poor areas. That's the argument that we need to keep places low wages in places that have poverty so that they can keep on being poor. I mean, it makes no sense. So we'll be going right at the indexed argument. The idea of having different wages at different places. 15 is the bottom, not the ceiling.
The bread doesn't cost less, the gas doesn't cost less, the healthcare doesn't cost less. And and I normally don't talk like this, but as an African American, I'm deeply offended by that, because that's what the South said about civil rights. We want to have less civil rights in the South and more in the North. Come on, y'all. Come on, senators. We want less freedom in the South. We are union, not separate, not divided. That's what we say we're not. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We did not say the corporations, well, the big ones, that we said banks years ago were too big to fail, well, people are too important to starve. That's, we need to have to get this argument right.
Yeah, and this argument that it's again, that's made often, that it's going to hurt small businesses, especially in the rural areas. Again, what we see over and over again is, if we were to immediately pay workers $15 an hour minimum, if we were to have that happen, not over time, but immediately, that would mean $368 billion coming into the economy. That doesn't hurt small business.
That's
that
right.
Doesn't hurt rural areas. That doesn't hurt transportation. That doesn't hurt parks and libraries and schools. All that does is build up a community to make it livable again. And so we cannot allow these kinds of lies to be used against doing what we know is needed and what is right. And folk from West Virginia were so clear about that today, that everybody has to be in, nobody can be out, that West Virginia shouldn't be the second poorest state in the country, and shouldn't have a senator that's saying that those poor people should make less than anywhere else in the country. That is not right. That is not just. And that's why we're coming together in power and organizing and making sure that we do not believe those lies, that we put the truth out there, the truth of the workers that spoke today, and that represents the truth of millions and millions of people.
Liz, make sure we say, lastly, to all the workers, we thank all of you all for your power. You all were tremendous in leading this meeting. We were there to be supported, but we're being led. We believe in the leadership of poor and low wealth people, not that somehow they need to be taken care of, and we also don't believe in using our story. We made it through poverty as a suggestion that people ought to just keep struggling under unjust situations, which is something the senator kind of suggested. He talked about how he had made it through poverty, but I said back to him, but that doesn't mean it was right. It doesn't mean that that's what should have been. In fact, that's more of a reason now why you have the power. You ought to change the situation. And lastly, don't make a false dichotomy. The issue is not between small businesses and workers. There are hundreds, thousands of businesses that have agreed, but more importantly, they make these false dichotomies to take the issue. Take the issue from what the issue is. Mm-hmm. If you do healthcare, you do infrastructure, you do living wages, you live from the bottom, the whole economy grows. Some people that are working 3 jobs won't have to work but 1. You do infrastructure right, you create additional jobs. You fund, as I think it was Pam that said, poor and low wealth people don't take their money to the Cayman Islands. That's what happens when you give people all these tax cuts. Poor and low wealth people live America, spend in America, and lift America.
Reverend Barber, I'd just like to tell the news media that right now, us low-wage workers, us working poor, us working homeless, we're not living, people. We're surviving. We have been in survival for a while. We don't live. We survive.
Mhm.
And that's not good enough in America. And it's not good enough for our families, my kids, it's not good enough. And we're not going to take this no more. We're going forward, not one step back.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, members of the media. You can certainly reach out to our public policy director, Attorney Connor Michelle Gupta Bond, if you have any pieces on our positions and where we stand. We thank you for coming on. We thank you for telling the story. We hope you'll join us on Monday as well. Rob, tell them where we'll be Monday.
Yes, on Monday, I see the question too on who will be with us. We're joining forces again with many of our state coordinating committees, the Poor People's Campaign and One Fair Wage and SEIU and CWA. So we'll have the labor unions there joining forces, also with the tipped workers, saying that we're not going to be divided, along with poor and low income folks. We'll be in West Virginia, where Reverend Barber will be. We'll also be in Arizona, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Illinois, in California, and New Hampshire. And there may be others added as time goes, and Washington, D.C. as well. And we'll also have small business owners who have been a part. And if you didn't see our Moral Monday from 2 weeks ago, you'll see that we had small business owners. There's a coalition of over 800 small business owners who have come out for One Fair Wage to endorse this. And so we'll have a large coalition to push this through. We know that we're closer than we've ever been. And I hope you can tell from the commitment of the folks on this call that we're not going anywhere and we're not giving up. We're not going one step back, but we're going to push this over the finish line. And we're looking forward to the people rising up in amazing ways this coming Monday and in the weeks to come. So we thank you for joining us. And please reach out to the comms folks, Martha and Yolanda, if you have any follow-up questions. But thank you all so much. And thank you to our speakers for being in the meeting today and for being on this press conference today. Your voice has been an inspiration to us and to so many. And we'll keep on building together. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.